Driven curricula, research and innovation avenues, and technology-enabled learning, but also holistic development with emphasis on employability and placements and numerous student-centric initiatives. One such initiative is the Study Abroad Program, or SAP, wherein you can pursue part of the semester at Amity campuses in New York, Singapore, London, Australia and Dubai, and prepare to be a global corporate citizen with an exposure to foreign culture, industry and economic dynamics. Amity also offers you a basket of career-focused disciplines in all streams of interest to Class 12 students like you. Let's take a glance. The pulsating campus life at Amity University, Gwalior is an enriching experience which allows you to flourish as an individual. By organizing and participating in diverse cultural events and competitions such as Youth Fest or being a part of Sangathan, the Inter-Amity Institution's Sports Meet that marks the birthday of Amity's founder-president, you get countless opportunities to enhance your organizational, teamwork and leadership skills.
At Amity University, Gwalior, you follow a learning and development curve that is designed to help you stay ahead of the future by empowering you to dream and carve out a vision. It has been conceived to help you optimize your true potential. So if you see yourself joining the League of Indian Visionaries shown earlier, then go ahead and envision a better tomorrow for yourself and for India.
A very warm and pleasant morning, ladies and gentlemen. I, Rinku Bhatia, along with my colleague, Dr. Pankaj Mishra, take this opportunity to accord a warm and cordial welcome to you all to the inaugural session of the International Conference on Innovations in Smart Technology, Advanced Materials and Communication Engineering, organized by Amity School of Engineering and Technology, Amity University, Madhya Pradesh. Nikola Tesla not only predicted the invention of the smartphone, but it can be argued that he even foresaw the impact of the Internet of Things. He rightly said, when wireless is perfectly applied, the whole world will be converted into a huge brain, all things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole, and we shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance. And yes, the information and communication technology is now the most important tool for organizations, industries, academia, and a common man. It is a proud privilege and honor to have with us our distinguished guest, Professor Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe, Chairman of All India Council for Technical Education, Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Harbola from IIT Kanpur, Dr. Alhat Kuwadekar, Chief Technical Officer, IFO-Things Netherlands, Dr. Asim Chauhan, Chairman and Chancellor of Amity University, Madhya Pradesh, Dr. W. Selvamurthy, President, STIF, respected Group Vice Chancellor and all Vice Chancellors of Amity Group, dignitaries, all the members of faculty of Amity Group, participants, attendees, staff and the students. I once again welcome all the respected guests and thank you all for sparing your valuable time to be with us today.
The International Conference on Innovation in Smart Technology, Advanced Material and Communication Engineering is a premium forum to provide an interdisciplinary platform for the scientists, research scholars, engineers, and practitioners to exchange their ideas and their latest research, investigation, results, idea, development, and application in all areas of smart technology and communication part. It is an opportunity to discuss the recent developments and review challenges faced by the community in the 21st century. To mark the beginning of the conference, let us take the blessings of Ma Saraswati, goddess of knowledge, and fold our hands for puja in virtual mode. Shubham Karoti Kalyanam Arogya. Thank you, everyone. Amity University, Madhya Pradesh has been awarded as the best private university of Madhya Pradesh twice under the influence and charismatic leadership of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Lieutenant General V.K. Sharma Ati Visis Seva Medal. Under his able guidance, from 2011 till today, university has grown by leaps and bounds towards excellence and has been ranked amongst the top 200 universities in the country in the NIRF ranking. Also, Amity School of Engineering and Technology has been ranked #1 private engineering institute in Madhya Pradesh. May I request, sir, for delivering the opening remarks. Please, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pankaj. To begin with, I extend a hearty welcome to the most revered person, our Honorable Chancellor and Chairman, Dr. Aseem Chauhanji, whose guiding light has been responsible for the university to do well over the last about 10 years. I also extend a hearty welcome to Dr. Anil D. Sastubudhe, the most respected chairman of AICTE, whose guidance is enabling the higher education system in the country. I also extend a welcome to Professors Dr. Manoj Harbola from IIT Kanpur and Dr. Alad Kwadgekar, who is the CTO from i4Things from Netherlands, Dr. Devashish Ghosh from IIT Roorkee, all the respective Vice Chancellors of Amity Education Group, all the panelists who have joined, all the research scholars, educationists, students, and the faculty members who are listening to me on this international conference on innovations in smart technology, advanced materials, and communication engineering. The world has grown by leaps and bounds, and the area which has been most pronounced in advancements in technology is the communication engineering. In our own lifetime, I have seen the growth from wired telephones to 5G, which is now emerging. Besides, the smart technology is being used today by all. The machine learning in which computers, softwares, and devices perform via cognition, very similar to human brain. From personalizing your news feed to better advertisements, social media platforms, machine learning is having its own benefits for each one of us. The cloud services have proliferated to a large extent, and today almost all companies are seeking to replace their exorbitant as well as premises-based systems for the past with the cloud services. Autonomous things, which includes wide scope of technologies like artificial intelligence, vehicles, drones, appliances, agents, and last but not the least, robotics. These have revolutionized the engineering and made our life much more comfortable today. The 5G is a revolution in itself. The speeds in 5G and the network bandwidth is expected to be about 20 times quicker than 4G. It ought to likewise expand information rates, enhance connectivity density, lessen idleness, and reinforce connection security all around. Nonetheless, the most important development of 5G is the capacity to make systems omnipresent. Today's international conference, we have received more than 250 research papers from all across the world, and these will be presented in 14 panel tracks being conducted after the valedictory section, after the morning inaugural session. And in the evening, we will have the valedictory sessions, but some of those presentations may well extend even to tomorrow, because we do not want to miss out even a single presenter who has prepared himself well, and all these publications will be published in Scopus Index or a Web of Science journal. So I set the ball rolling now, and I would now request the organizers to continue with the function. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Your words of wisdom have always been an inspiration and guided us. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. Enable leadership with knowledge and expertise is necessary to drive a change in the education system to meet the global changes and challenges for empowering the youth of the country. Today we have with us Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe, Chairman of All India Council for Technical Education, who is an experienced and foremost researcher, technocrat, and excellent academician who is steering the technical education towards excellence. Dr. Sahasrabudhe, Professor of Mechanical Engineering at Indian Institute of Guwahati, is currently Chairman of All India Council for Technical Education. He has held several important academic, research, and administrative positions at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, Tata Consulting Engineers, Northeastern Regional Institute of Science and Technology, Itanagar, and IIT Guwahati. He also served as Director, College of Engineering, Pune since 2006 on deputation from IIT Guwahati prior to joining as AICTE Chairman. As an academician and researcher in NERIST and IIT Guwahati, and as an administrator in the capacity of Director COEP, he has taken several new initiatives for academic, curricular, and co curricular activities, entrepreneurship, research, and good governance. He is Chairman, Basic Scientific Research, Empowered Committee of UGC and SWAYAM Board. He is Fellow of ISTE, IETE, etc. He has been bestowed with several awards, which include Maha Entrepreneur Award 2011 of Praj Industries, Jeevan Gaurav Puraskar from MIT, World Peace University Pune in 2016, Mahatma Gandhi Leadership Award from Indian Achievers Forum, and CSR Times Award in 2019, etc. Now I invite and request Professor Sahasrabudhe sir for his words of wisdom. Please, sir.
Thank you, Rinku Bhatia ji. Good morning to all of you. Namaskar. I'm indeed pleased to be amidst all of you in the inaugural function of the International Conference of Innovations in Smart Technology, Advanced Materials, and Communication Engineering being held by Amity University in Gwalior. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Asim Chauhan, Chancellor of the University, in whose name Asim is there. Asim is limitless. And therefore, the kind of support that is coming in for education in terms of expanding number of universities in different parts of the country, he has been doing the job. Lieutenant General V.K. Sharma, who is the Vice Chancellor of this Amity University, himself Ati Visishta Seva Medal. So it means Ati Visishta Seva he is also rendering in the education sector. Dr. Manoj Hajola, who is a faculty from IIT Kanpur, similarly faculty from Netherlands, IITs, others, and Dr. Jha is a Vice Chancellor from the University of the same Amity group in Jharkhand. I was just thinking, because his name is starting with Jha, same Jharkhand is continued and he's put in Jharkhand or what, I was just wondering. But all of these people who have joined, Major General Jain and all other delegates, in fact, coming to delegates, this is a virtual conference. So delegates are real, but they are in virtual mode. Otherwise we will assume that they are also virtual delegates. And the time is not far when we are talking about innovations in smart technology, robotics, and in terms of AI, machine learning, data science, as well as, variety of robotic and activities like augmented reality, virtual reality, XR, etc. When they come in, there's no wonder someday, like our chess being played by the champions, world champions with a computer and getting defeated. There could be research publications coming from a robot, who knows, artificial intelligence based, it will do some analysis based on the data available and create a paper. And there may be virtual delegates also in some time to come. I think I'm just expanding what are the possibilities in the future. Therefore, innovations in smart technology, advanced materials, and communication engineering is a very important topic, rightly pointed out by General Sharma, that when we started, we didn't even have telephones, and we had to wait for doing an STD or ISD call to having a mobile and having not just 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, who knows, 6G, everything will come, and the data speeds will be so massive that I think we will be able to reach, see each other, talk to each other seamlessly. And I think that is what we are leading to. Therefore, the projects such as smart cities undertaken by the government of India, there are 100 smart cities considered. So all of these innovations which we are talking about in terms of whether it is materials, whether it is in terms of various smart technologies, that is AI, IoT, machine learning, deep learning, robotics, AR, VR, cyber, cloud computing, data analytics, blockchain, they will become some way or the other part of these smart cities in different manners. Not only that, there will be communication, which is very, very significant and important. We talked about 5G. So whatever sensors are going to pick up, how fast they will reach to the server in the data, some cloud, and then using those cloud servers, how we can analyze that quickly and take, reactive action. That is also very, very important, because there may be a theft, there may be a lot of terror activities which are likely to happen, and therefore, in all this, whether smart cities or any other place, the kind of sensors, especially the camera, the movement, all of these sensors are going to become a very important part. But the collected information has to also reach at the fastest possible rate to the servers where it can be analyzed. And these analytical tools, using cloud computing or using fast track computers, which are, you have parallel computing, you have supercomputers, and analyzing that data and what decision is to be taken based on what inputs are coming. So all of that has to happen in microseconds. Otherwise, the time is lost. I think some catastrophe may occur. This is not only for security purposes, but also in terms of places where we have all been detecting today because of the analysis that we are able to do on the cloud, and how we are able to even know about the rainfall, the cyclones that are incoming. All of these are able to be predicted, and the action that has to be taken because of that. We have a lead time of sometimes 2 days, 3 days. We can avoid the damage to the property, the people, all of that. And this is all possible because of these various smart technologies which we are talking about. And that's why these smart technologies are certainly important. But along with that, you have added these two things which are very important. I talked about communication. How fast that communication happens is important. Without that, advanced technologies will remain where they are. And therefore, advanced technologies coupled with electronics and communication is going to play a vital role. But the sensors part, which I said, and that is where advanced materials will come in. We have materials, sometimes we have our stories in Ramayana that Hanumanji used to change his size to a very massive size and shape, and then do something. They appear to be stories, but today we can have materials which are called shape memory alloys, and then memory-based materials, which will remember what they have done earlier, and their shape can change, size can change, and depending on the context, we use them as sometimes spring. Same material can be used as a damper in mechanical engineering. I think these are all phenomenal developments which are possible by using smart materials. These advanced materials are also smart materials. They are not only natural materials, but combination of natural materials and some of the artificial materials being generated. And therefore, the conference is very, very important in terms of all these three different, appearing to be different technologies to be integrated into one, whereby a lot of applications can come in. I said security part is one, but why not even use it for education? We have artificial intelligence-based training of students, which is possible, and AICT's NEET portal, National Educational Alliance for Technologies, does take care of this. There are several products which have come in the market, both from the small scale sector startups to large scale multinational companies like Microsoft or IBM and so on. So all of these products are useful for knowing the level of learning of the students. This is what we call often in the new education policy as give value to the prior learning. What is the prior learning of a particular student? Making use of that prior learning, what he wants to do, what is the outcome that a student wants to achieve, how we allow him to travel that journey very comfortably by asking him to do certain number of courses which are related to each other, prerequisites are studied, and then he moves forward in a manner that at the shortest possible time he achieves the outcome that he desires and the nation desires or the educational institution desires. And this is all possible through the AI-based training of a student. If it is possible for a student for education purposes, it is also possible for using it in the field in terms of whether it is agriculture, when the seed is to be sown, when is the crop is to be taken, yield is to be recovered. If there are any, problems which are likely to arise, how do we protect ourselves from, without using even insecticides, how do we control the pesticides are not being used, still we can control. All of these things are also part of the game that agricultural sector may be benefited. During COVID, who else will not know about this, that the data analytics, the way the pandemic is spreading in which district, in which village, which city, and therefore what needs to be taken care of. All of that is possible again in the health sector, or reaching of the medicines on time, or the remdesivir on time, or in terms of vaccines being reached on time. All of this is also possible through the use of these technologies, where the demand, wherever it is increasing, how do we reach that place at the right appropriate time? Japanese used to call what is known as just-in-time approach. That is becoming more significant when there are shortages, but there are certain places excesses. So how do we have the excess material or whatever medicine is available in one place can be taken to the remote other place? You use various types of technologies. We have used even aircraft. But we may use drones also to deliver all of these things. So I think all these technologies in some way or the other are merging for the purposes. Defense forces, will require monitoring of the borders. For that also, we have various types of cameras developed which can see from a drone and then take look at what is happening on the ground and then take an action which is required to be taken by the armed forces. So I think in all possible ways, these technologies are emerging as very, very useful technologies, both at war and peace. And that's why making use of them, studying them, researching them is going to be more and more important. For this in the end, I talked about smart cities in the beginning and that 100 cities, but AICT has started an award for, earlier we started with Clean Campus Award, then added Green and Clean Campus Award to take care of the environment. But we have added to that smart, Green, Clean and Smart Campus Award. Why is this smartness required? Whether the quantum of electricity that we use, the quantum of water that we use, the wastage that is happening, how waste management is happening, and how the campus is kept not only green, clean, but also how we reduce, recycle whatever is possible. Today we talk about circular economy. The reuse, recycle, etc. is gone. So further, every bit of it is not a waste, but it is a wealth. And how do we make use of it? And using sensors, you have to monitor, only then we know where we are going wrong and take corrective steps. So an award is there for Smart Green Campus. And so this smartness, when students observe in their campuses, naturally, wherever they go, whether in governance, maybe some of them will become IAS officers, some of them may become defense officers, some of them may become an entrepreneur, some of them get into jobs in some companies, but all of them, having learned this, will start practicing this wherever they go. And that is where actual education is being used for the betterment of the society. That is where we all come into this picture. So I think I'm very happy that this conference is being organized. Two quick things which we did in the pandemic, I would like to mention before I close. All these technologies which we are talking, all AI, IoT, machine learning, we have added them as part of the curriculum. But we found that teachers themselves were not trained in this because they graduated 20 years back, 15 years back, 25 years back. So if we bring this in curriculum, who will teach them effectively and create interest among students? And that's why faculty development program, faculty training in these technologies became very, very important. And under Atal Academy, AICT's Training and Learning Academy, we began workshops of 50 faculty members, couple of 3-4 experts coming to that institution, and then training them in these 5-day workshops. But during the pandemic, when suddenly everything halted, we used technology again. And using the technology, we have been able to conduct 948 workshops in the last 1 year during pandemic, trained 165,000 faculty members, and almost all IITs, NITs, central universities, several colleges, they all participated in this mammoth task. And interestingly, earlier we used to have only in one workshop 50, now we can have 200. We used to have 3 or 4 experts. Today we have a whole world as the expert, because you can draw in people from as far east as Australia, New Zealand, or Singapore or Japan, to as far west as US and Canada, or from the Europe, and they come in, only adjustment is that of the time scheduling. Someone who is in the morning may have to take the class in the evening, evening to morning, because the 24-hour cycle of our clock and the world over, depending on the convenience of the people, we allow them. And then we have had more than 700,000 people, 2,000 from industry, 2,000 from abroad. They all participated in this massive workshops of Atal Academies. Training 165,000 faculty members has become a world record. Very recently, we had a training through a startup company, IIT Madras startup company called Guvi. Themselves and AICT jointly held 1 day, in 24 hours, how do you teach Python? And using AI, they will do face recognition, create a face recognition tool or software. And we trained 126,000, and Guinness Book of World Record has recorded this. So I think there may be pandemic. We all are aware that we are all going through a crisis. We have to use masks. We have to keep not social distancing, physical distancing, but social connect. And then while doing all of this, we have to continue our education and the learning. And learning should never stop. And for enabling that, today we have technology. We have 5G. We have internet. We have a gigabit of connectivity, and we have to reach to Nixon corners of the country. All our online classes must be available for a person sitting in a remote Jharkhand or in Nagaland or Mizoram, so that truly we make a developed India, and we can make Atmanirbhar Bharat out of all of this. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir, for blessing us with your kind words. I'm sure your optimistic vision and inspirational thoughts will motivate all to work towards not only making their institutes, organizations, their homes, as well as the country to a new world. We have with us a very dynamic Chancellor, Dr. Aseem Chauhan. Dr. Chauhan is the trustee of not-for-profit Amity Education Group and also additional president, Ripnan Balvet Education Foundation. He is an institution builder with a vision to help make Amity one of the leading education providers in the world. He endeavors to nurture holistic, world-class citizens who are driven by human values and equipped to excel on a global stage. Amity University Madhya Pradesh is a testimony of his relentless vision of creating possibilities and ascending to new heights of excellence. Now I request Dr. Chauhan to kindly address the gathering. Please, sir.
I am feeling very happy today because we have in our midst a person of such deep expertise, devotion to the nation, a love of students, an absolute brilliance as our dear Professor Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe, Chairman AICT. Whenever I hear him, whenever I see him, whenever I meet him, my belief that our education system will keep improving, that we have the very best minds working on how to transform education is reinforced. Even in his today's session, you would have heard multiple things. He can talk in equal terms about the latest technologies and what is happening in advancement. He can also talk about what is happening in policy in the country. But at the end of it, his love for students, his love for the youth shines through each and every time. And each of his ideas and his policies is aimed in that direction. Professor Sahasrabudhe, we welcome you, and I'm so grateful. I know how busy you are. Every minute of yours is highly valuable, but when Amity invites you, you always come, you share your thoughts, and we as a group are incredibly thankful to you. We have Dr. Manoj Harbola with us. Dr. Harbola, we welcome you, we thank you. And Dr. Kowadikar from I4 Things in the Netherlands, representing the corporate world and innovation in companies that are implementing what we are talking about here today. We welcome you. I have rarely seen, maybe never, so many Amity vice chancellors all together on one platform. They're also busy. Maybe one can come, two can come for a conference. Today, I think everyone has come. So Dr. Balwinder Shukla, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Noida, Professor P.B. Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Haryana, Professor Bhatnagar and Dr. Jain, Honorable Vice Chancellor and Pro VC from Jaipur, Professor Sunil Dhaneshwar, Pro VC and Head of Amity University, Lucknow, Professor R.K. Jha, Honorable VC of Amity University, Jharkhand, and several others who do not have their camera on, but I know are online who have sent me messages. Almost the whole galaxy of the leadership. Professor Qamar Rahman is here, a great scientist working between North America and India to forward scientific endeavor at Amity. And of course, our own Lieutenant General V.K. Sharma, Honorable VC, Amity University, Madhya Pradesh, Gwalior, but also overseeing as acting VC, Amity University, Maharashtra, in Mumbai as of today. General Sharma, I congratulate you for all of your initiatives. Your team has done a wonderful job to conceptualize this deliberation today on smart technology, advanced materials, and communication engineering. Rightfully a topic which is a convergence of multiple ideas and a amalgamation of technologies that undoubtedly is going to come together to redefine how we live our lives, how we operate in companies, and how we live and learn. I am very curious to hear from the many brilliant students and research scholars and faculty members and practitioners from India and abroad, the papers that they will be presenting. I would like to listen to as many as possible. You have screened them very carefully. And Sharma, we were discussing that what is the quality of the papers that will come in. You know, it is not the number, but the hurdle that you have set, the screening that is being done, I think is tremendous. You have insisted that they be novel papers, that they are not published, that they are absolutely new. The quality is high. I look forward to it. And when we see each of these people, I will see in them the future of our country, young innovators who are pushing forward the frontiers of technology with their ideas. This is absolutely great that this conference has been organized. We should see that the most brilliant of these papers, can we work together with them? There may be many from outside of Amity to see if we can help them develop intellectual property rights, develop commercialization opportunities in their areas. That would give additional joy and satisfaction and further impetus to the conference. While we're talking about technology innovation, actually, what comes to my mind also is how quickly there is innovation and change in the education sector also. And Professor Sahasrabudhe has been an architect of the national education policy. And many of his thoughts, even before the NEP was announced, many of the ideas and thoughts that he has been giving over the years, one can clearly see incorporated into the national education policy and his ideas of how the new policy is going to change education in the country. I just want to highlight one or two thoughts of his and how this is going to transform education. Number one, innovation. Professor Sahasrabudhe has always said that we are all born innovators. What a noble thought. He says we are all born innovators. The education system can either stifle us or promote that innovation. When I hear this, the responsibility to all of us becomes very clear that we have to build an education system which can bring out in every student their special gift, their innovation, their ideas. It has to be a platform to allow students to grow, not to stifle them. But this idea of yours that you have put forward and which the national education policy brings forward in terms of flexibility, choice, personalization, and customization of education is very important. Professor Buddhe has always also said that curriculum has to be updated continuously. I think this is an idea which in our country is so very important. With the changing world, even with the ideas we'll see today, unless we keep updating the curriculum very regularly, this will not be possible. And one concept, one time Professor Buddhe had visited one of our university campuses. Professor P.V. Sharma, I think it may have been yours, in Haryana. And we welcomed him at the gate and we came inside. And I was observing one thing. Normally when VIPs and dignitaries come, they very quickly want to go to the auditorium, have a cup of tea, and then we go to deliver a lecture. But that day, Professor Buddhe gravitated towards your student projects, which were displayed to the left-hand side. And he spent going around to every student project and asking, what is your idea? Who are you? Then there was a poster and project paper display. He went to every project and asked the scientists, what are you doing? Where is the funding from? What is your innovation? And when he left, all of our students, all of the young scholars were so deeply inspired that someone of such senior stature will spend so much time asking and talking. Professor Buddhe, I'll never forget how you inspired the youth. And I think as a academic innovator, as a policy maker for the country, if that is where your heart and your thought is, then the country can feel very encouraged. At Amity also, we have taken a lot of your learning. We have, from a very early time, implemented what we call Education 4.0, which mirrors Industry 4.0, in which we are integrating the latest of technology for many years now, AI and data science and cybersecurity and IoT into the curriculum, but looking also at innovations in how the teaching, learning, and pedagogy can be imparted. Yesterday, we were screening some startups for funding that we have received from the Atal Innovation Mission. And one of our panelists who was helping us screen these startups said one line, which I thought was very relevant. He asked one of the young entrepreneurs, he said, I hope you did not waste this crisis. I hope you did not waste this crisis. And I felt so happy about it because this is something our founder president has been saying now for a long time, that this pandemic that we have seen is once in 100 years, in our lifetime. This opportunity to harness the change, the innovation potential, the changes that can come, may never come again. So in education, we have to think very deeply that the learning we have from this online experiment, the behavioral change which has come in the students, the incredible training that has been imparted to so many educators in the country, how can we draw from that the very best and integrate it into our education systems going forward? How can we create systems using technology and adaptive learning, using data science to make sure that every student, no matter how many students we have, that every student feels that their need is addressed in a very individualized manner, that we're not putting students through factories and cohorts, but rather that we are in a Guru Shishya Parampara manner, asking every child that what is it that you're good at? What is it the speed at which you would like to learn? What is the portfolio of subjects? So at Amity, sir, we are very much focused on this desire to provide customized, individualized education. A lot of inspiration we draw from you and your thoughts. We listen to every word you say at every platform very carefully. And you talked about smart cities and smart campuses. So I'm happy to share that at Amity University, Madhya Pradesh in Gwalior, we are the university selected by the state government to make Gwalior into a smart city. So we have the agreement with the local government administration. There are active talks happening. Now, maybe we would like to see change happen in a faster rate, but I know that our university is actively engaged to help make Gwalior a smart city. And in terms of smart campus, we have been the first platinum LEED certified university in India and only the second in all of Asia, which means that all things, wastewater management, proper utilization of the environment, renewable energy, photovoltaic integrated buildings, all of the things, and the operation and maintenance of that. The second platinum LEED certified university in India was also an Amity University. And each one of our universities has either platinum or gold status, because we want to give our students an example that this is how life should be lived, that your university does not just teach it, we live it, and thereby inspiring them like you inspire us. Professor Buddha, we are always grateful to you, not only for the words you impart, but how you live your life. You are an incredibly humble person who, in a very loving way, nurtures so many institutions. We always feel inspired by you. I know that all of our VCs are here, not because they have been told that, please come to this conference, but because they have been attracted by you to hear your words and to tell you that each of the Amity universities in India and abroad is imbibing your thoughts, your values, your sanskars, and will take forward the ideas of innovation and change in education that you have promulgated in letter and spirit, so that we as a country can rise and impart better education for our children. Harbola ji, thank you to you. You have spared your time. Purvadekar ji, we look forward to hearing from you. And to all of our vice chancellors, senior leaders, I got so many messages on the site. Mr. Kothari, you message, you are here. So many others have messaged. Top senior people, Dr. Gurinder Singh might be online. I hope Dr. Selvamurthy is online. He attends all of these sessions. If he is, we should bring him onto camera, one of the top scientists of the country. All of us, after hearing Professor Sahasrabudhe getting his time so liberally, have a responsibility, and we must pledge that we will keep taking under the guidance and vision of our founder president, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, who we are so lucky to have the guidance of and continuous mentorship of, that with the ideas of Professor Sahasrabudhe, we will take not only Amity universities, but the Indian education sector to great heights, that we will try to create an environment, an ecosystem where Indian universities are in the top 100, if not 200, very soon in the world, and that people can say that Indian universities also are amongst the very best. This is our desire. Thank you so much to all.
Thank you, sir, for your motivational words. The International Conference on Innovations in Smart Technology, Advanced Materials and Communication Engineering has received huge response from various reputed academic and research institutions across the globe. Papers have been selected on the basis of high quality and application by the review committee and have been shortlisted for publication in Scopus and Web of Science Index journals and compiled in the form of e-souvenir. I request all the dignitaries to join us for releasing the e-souvenir of the conference. More than 250 papers have been received from different countries like Australia, Canada, Bahrain, Ethiopia, and have been compiled in the form of e-souvenir. Thank you, everyone. A thorough researcher and academician, Dr. Manoj Kumar Harbola, is with us. Professor Harbola is working at IIT Kanpur. He obtained his doctorate degree in the City of University of New York, USA in 1990, and subsequently he carried out postdoctoral research at the University of USA. He joined the Center of Advanced Technology Indore as a scientist in 1992. He joined IIT Kanpur as associate professor in April 2000. He is a theoretical physicist whose chief interest lies in electronic structure of atoms, molecules, and solid state density function methods. He has supervised number of PhDs and MTech thesis in last 20 years. He has been more than 100 papers in international journals and national conference to his credit. Professor Harbola has also authored a book on engineering physics. He is the recipient of Distinguished Teacher Award, IIT Kanpur 2007. He has developed an NPTEL course on engineering mechanics and MOOC on engineering mechanics, electromagnetic theory, quantum mechanics, and solid state physics. I request Professor Harbola to address the gathering. Please, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me over. It's certainly quite an honor to be among such distinguished guests. I'm a small academician trying to contribute my bit whenever I can. So I think the best way to talk to all the people who have gathered here is to do academics. And I prepared a small talk on innovation and how it is helpful to be curious and do curiosity-driven research that feeds innovation. So I'm going to share my screen now and then start this talk. It's a short 15-minute talk, but I do hope to convey something that is important. Okay, so what I'm talking about is curiosity and innovation, since this is a talk about innovation. And need for a very strong foundation in basic sciences. When I say basic sciences, I include everything, engineering sciences, the way you want to be creative for engineering education. And as we realize slowly that education now and in the coming century is not just, learning something and be knowledgeable about something. It is about keeping on learning. So what we need to do in our education is make people aware of how they can keep learning. As somebody has said, and I'm forgetting the name, earlier people who were rich, they became rich by gaining knowledge and then just keep having a propriety on that. Nowadays, people who become rich are those who are in the flow of knowledge. Knowledge is flowing, and that's what you got to catch. And to do that, you have to be curious, you have to be learning, and you have to be ready so that you can learn very quickly when new things come. So let me start by just curiosity-driven research. When you have curiosity, what happens? Let us look at this picture where you have this T-Rex. Everybody knows about it. There are movies, kids read. If you have children at home, they read about it. So did you ever wonder why a T-Rex has such a long tail? And look at it. It has very short feet in front, and then it has a very long tail. And what does it have in common with this? Look at this girl who's doing tightrope walking with this pole in the hand. These are the curious questions, things that are around you, that if you look at carefully and analyze, you can bring into do innovation. So you have to be looking around. You have to be analyzing things. You have to be talking to a lot of different people. You have to be doing a lot of reading. And that's how new innovations and new engineering is going to come. So let me just show you a very simple application of this, and this we all know about pyramids. The same principle of balancing the torque, which T-Rex uses, because it has this huge head and it has to balance on 2 feet. So it has to have a long tail so that torque is balanced. The girl walking on tightrope is balancing that torque by having this long pole, and she can just tilt it a bit, change the balance. And the same principle was used in building pyramids. You're taking all these huge stones up to a very, very, very high places and put it there. So as you all gather to learn about innovation, what is innovation? You have to keep your eyes open. And I've deliberately in this talk, I've not talked about electrical engineering at all, because this conference is about electrical engineering. But I want to emphasize that as an engineer, as an educated engineer, as a future innovator, you have to keep your eyes open to everything else and cut across the fields. So my topic is how this curiosity-driven research could possibly be used. I'll be giving you examples. There was this paper in 1933. I want you to focus on this date, 1933. And look at the title of the paper, On Musical Air Bubbles and the Sound of Running Water. It was done for fun. If you look at this paper, you see that this person has put a tube in the water bucket and he's measuring the frequencies. If you want to do it yourself and listen to the sound, go home and pour some soda in a glass, pour some Coca-Cola in a glass, pour some Pepsi in a glass, and you hear this zzz sound. That's what it is. 1933, curiosity driven. How could this be used? Fast forwarding to 2018. A big concern in 21st century is, the ecological changes, the way environment is changing, the way glaciers are melting. There's a big threat about Arctic ice melting that raise the sea level. So that same thing, curiosity-driven research, was used in 2018, and I'm giving you this article, which came in the Scientific American in May 2018. How fast are glaciers melting? Just listen to the sound. Underwater microphones can glean valuable data, about it. And how do they sound? All of you have internet. I'd like you to just go to Google, type sound of melting glaciers, listen to it. If you amplify the noise you heard in a soda glass, it's exactly the same sound. So the origin is the same. All of a sudden, something that was done for fun, becomes very useful 85 years later. This was based, the Scientific American article was based on these two papers: unusually loud ambient noise in Tidewater Glacier fjords. Yeah, I'm not able to read it. A signal of ice melt. This appeared in Geophysics Research Letters, which is a highly prestigious journal. And the second one came 3 years later. Let it dry. So as it dries from liquid to this dried drop, it develops a ring. I did it with a color, holy color. Let it drop, let it dry, and it develops a ring. This is known as coffee ring effect. And if those of you who are, I do that when I'm eating. Sometimes dal is dropping on the shirt, develops a ring. Related phenomena. When you fry potatoes, they become very crisp at the corners, at the edges. This is a related phenomenon. When you see a block of ice cream melting, it melts from corners, from the edges. Just curious about this thing. Right? And all this comes from Fick's law of particle diffusion, thermal diffusion, electrostatics, and all this can be put together. So this is an understanding one is developing. This is all curiosity driven. And it is all connected to science behind lightning rods, because everything is happening at the edges. So lightning rods are made very sharp. And the question is, can I use now? So this is something that was done by one of my colleagues using coffee ring effect.
Sir, try to go to the slideshow, sir. Slideshow.
I'm वही कर रहा हूँ. एक minute. Question from the current slide. Okay. All right. So we are on the job now.
Yes, sir.
Next, look at something else where it was used. Coffee rings as low resource diagnostics, detection of the malaria biomarker Plasmodium falciparum histidine rich protein 2. So again, what they do in this case is, if the blood sample dries on a slide, it also forms those rings and things get concentrated. So a very innocuous looking effect now is being used in biology and bioengineering. Next, there's something we'll all connect with very easily. If you're doing inkjet printing, the ink that comes and it gets deposited would get dried, and due to coffee ring effect, you would not have a very clean print, but a drop which has these concentrated things on the rim. And therefore, what you're going to have is not a uniform drop. So there's a lot of research which is funded by Xerox and all these companies that make these machines, how to reduce coffee ring. So you see, on one side, you saw that it can be used usefully. On the other side, we want to suppress it. Go to another way of doing it. Go to another curiosity-driven research. So there is something called, there was a lot of papers on this, and one of them is Marangoni effect reverses coffee ring depositions. That's what you want in a printing or something like that. So let me show you now what drove this. If you ever noticed, if you have a wine glass and you swirl it around and you have these tears of wine coming down, this is a very common phenomena. Anytime you mix alcohol and water and do this, you will see these tears coming down. And this is known as Marangoni effect. Mr. Marangoni wrote a thesis on this, explaining this. And this is actually related to surface tension. So I would like you to go home, do this. Put some black pepper or some masala or something on water and put a drop of soap in between, or put some soap on your hand and just touch it in between, and you'll suddenly see it going away. That's because low surface tension thing spreads. You take a plastic sheet, cut a board kind of shape like what I've shown on the left, and put a drop of soap in the middle, in that hole. It suddenly starts moving because that low surface tension thing is moving out of it and it pushes it. This is what Marangoni effect is, and it's connected to wine tears. So what happens in a wine glass is there's this liquid out here, is mixture of alcohol and water, and when you have made this film, alcohol evaporates. It evaporates much faster. So this is high surface tension thing. Low surface tension liquid rises up, takes it up, and when it cannot hold itself, it starts coming down as drops. That's what. So this is pure curiosity driven, observing, trying to understand. And then it is to be used in reducing back to drying droplets. Marangoni effect reverses Coffey-Ring effect. So remember, Coffey-Ring is everything is coming down to the rings. It forms a ring. What you want to do is reverse it. So you mix something that produces an inverse current, so that things which are coming out here go back. And you get a uniform drop rather than a drop which is not uniform. So what I have tried to do through this is curiosity-based research, the basis of innovative engineering. I could give a lot of examples from electromagnetic and communications. Unless Hertz was doing something, radio could not have been made. So keep your eyes open, look around, connect across fields, read a lot. Go to talks, I'm an electrical engineer, I don't want to hear mechanical engineer. No, that's a very wrong attitude nowadays. Go listen to biologists. Maybe you'll see a dinosaur picture and some idea will come to your mind. And this requires a strong foundation in basic sciences. This requires a lot of training in learning about very different things. This is 21st century. And therefore, it's very important that any engineering education curriculum be based on core program that provides such a foundation, not just basic sciences, humanities, biology, engineering sciences, technical arts. And what has happened a lot of times, people, because there's so much knowledge that some things is to be thrown out and first X falls on basic sciences and these things. But then what you're producing is people who can work on that area very well. But then when it comes to cut across fields, to make connections, to become innovators, they get lost. So it's very important. And as such, science departments, all departments in any engineering technical institute, they need to have full-fledged independent science units with excellent research programs. Something like the bubbles creating noise may be useful 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the road. You never know. That has to be encouraged. And that's what is going to make a difference between a good engineer, an innovator, and a routine engineer in the future. Thank you very much for listening to me and these views. I've enjoyed being here, listening to all the great people, Professor Sahasrabudhe, Mr. Chauhan, I'm seeing you for the first time. It was very great visionary person. I mean, you've done a fantastic job. And everybody else, General Sharma and others, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The curiosity you have generated from the daily life things, I hope all the participants will take up some issue from this and do some productive research which will help not only them but also the nation. Before I invite our next guest, Dr. Alad Kuwarekar, Chief Technical Officer in i4Things BV IoT Company at Netherlands, I feel delighted to introduce him. Dr. Kuwarekar received his BSc degree in Information Technology from University of Mumbai in 2004, MSc in Mobile Computing from University of Glamorgan, UK in 2006, and again PhD from the same university in Seamless Session Mobility Framework for next generation networks. He is currently working as Chief Technical Officer in i4Things BV IoT Company at Netherlands since 2019. He also worked as CTO and co-founder in MyLifeGuard Limited IoT company in University of South Wales, Cardiff, UK from 2010 to 2016. His areas of interest include mobile communication, next generation networks, wavelength transforms, IMS and LTE for safety systems. He is editor for many international journals like Journal of Communication Systems and Network, etc. He is member of various professional bodies such as IEEE, USA, IEEE, etc. His patent has been published on the topic of security system, which is a UK patent on 26 Feb 2014. This patent describes how SIP IMS can transmit video from an IP camera through ISDN to a 3G phone as a native 3G video call. He has developed different apps such as Android, Symbian, iOS, Raspberry Pi, etc. He has, to his credit, published books, book chapters, and more than 40 research papers in various reputed international and national journals and conferences. Now I request Dr. Alat to kindly share your knowledge with us. Please, sir.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm just going to share my screen now. Are you able to see my presentation full screen?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Visible.
Okay, excellent. Okay. So I'm going to today talk about IoT or Internet of Things as the next generation smart technology. We all hear a lot about IoT, and what is IoT all about? IoT is basically, as we said, Internet of Things, but how does all this hang together? So basically, the Internet of
Sorry,
Things.
Dr. Alat, can you move on to show mode? It's not in
Okay,
slideshow.
it's not in slideshow mode. Okay, now is that
Yeah.
better?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so basically the Internet of Things, or I think you cannot even read my slides right now because it's getting covered by the video most likely.
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay. Because I thought Zoom is overlaying on it. That was the thing. But let me see if I
can
can hide
comfortably
Zoom.
read.
Okay, excellent, good. Okay, so the Internet of Things, or IoT, is a system of interrelated computer devices, mechanical and digital machines, or objects, or even animals or people that are provided with unique identifiers with the ability to transfer data over a network without requiring human to computer interaction. For example, now I've got here a sort of a motion sensor. When this motion sensor triggers, my light bulb goes on. And this is just a simple IoT interaction that happens between devices. In case of my motion detector detecting motion, there could also be additional scenarios like, things like my kettle going on if I wanted it to, or something else that turns on or turns off, things like that. So that is where all this IoT interaction happens. So usually we can divide it into smart home IoT and industrial IoT. A smart home IoT is basically making your home smarter with these sort of internet connected devices, and that can transmit data and take some actions when necessary. However, with industrial IoT, it is mostly about, if you want to get your manufacturing process right, or if you're controlling a nuclear reactor, for example, where a human cannot go, then possibly you do it remotely. And that is where industrial IoT is pretty important. So you can extend all of these things to smart cities, and we hear all this concept about smart cities. So what is all this fuss about smart cities? So usually when you think about smart cities, what is sold to you as of today is, yeah, we will have 5G networks, we'll have data, higher data speeds or things like that. No, but we need more than that. Like, if I want to know where a parking space is available to park my car, I should be given that information well in advance. My car should be able to book that parking space. Everything should be automatically be paid for from my bank account. I don't have to touch anything. I just go to the parking spot, get in, park my car, and everything is done. The car should search for it. The car should pay for it. Everything should be done in one go. I don't have to worry about anything. When I leave the parking space, automatically it should be paid for. That is how it should be. Usually what happens, especially my experience of India, is that you have to pay the cash, then the person says, "Arey, chutta nahi hai mere paas," and all those things happen. Why should I think about all this? Like in Europe, we don't even carry any cash with us. It's usually all card payments. It's done, dusted, and that also is not needed. That is also, I think, a step too far at the moment. It should all be automatic. So let's go through a bit of history of IoT. Most of us think that IoT is a new subject, but IoT has been around for a long, long time. What happened during World War II was that all the communication lines were destroyed. Because if you think of a telephony network, it has to go to an exchange, and there is a single cable linking an exchange, or maybe multiple cables linking an exchange to exchange, and so on. But then, if that exchange is destroyed due to some natural disaster or due to a man-made disaster, then basically everything comes to a halt. So at that stage, what the the Defense Department said was that let's actually create something new, which we all today know as internet. Or in those days, it was called as ARPANET from DARPA, which was the Defense Academy. So they created this wherein if anything goes wrong, at least you have multiple links and you can continue using the networks. And then basically that turned into the whole internet as we know today. In 1982, okay, the internet is there. Then what do we do with it? Okay, we can transfer data, we can visit websites. Most of us can watch videos on YouTube. Fantastic, we can do all of this, but why not control devices? That was the idea. In 1982, Carnegie Mellon University in the US had the soda vending machine, wherein most of the researchers said, yeah, I want to know if the soda vending machine has soda which is cold enough for me. So they wanted to check how cold was it when it was loaded. So they put in sensors, they connected it to the network, and they started getting information how cold it was. Great. Now people started becoming lazy. So somebody said, yeah, I want to make the first internet toaster. So John Romke wanted to make the first internet toaster. He went on to make it. But the downside was it still needed you to load bread slices into it. Otherwise, it wouldn't do the toast for you. So eventually he built like a robotic arm which would grab the bread, put it in the toaster. Fantastic. That was a good idea, but never worked. Then in 1998, we suddenly saw an explosion of devices. How many devices do we have at home? Like if I think about myself, because I work in the world of IoT, I at least have 50 smart devices in the house. I have got my own computer, my tablet, my iPad. My wife has got something similar with her. Then the smartphones and so on. Yeah, and then smart TVs as well. So we have got so many internet connected devices that we started running out of IP addresses. So at that point in time, because we could not get any public IPs anymore, then we got NATs, which is network address traversal. So if you ever do IP config on your computer, you will actually see the IP address given to your devices in the home is 192.168.2.1 or 0.1 or whatever in that domain. But then you also have an external IP address. If you do what is my IP, you will see your public IP. And most of us who use CCTV at home, we usually what we do is we do things like port forwarding, wherein you give your public IP and a port number, and when an incoming request comes on that, it is forwarded to your appropriate IP camera or an NVR device. That is how it would work in the past. But now technology has evolved and people are now using more sophisticated methods, so you don't need to do that anymore. So then we got this IPv6 addresses because we are running out of IPv4 addressing due to the limitations. Now we are getting into IPv6, which will run out very soon. It will even run out faster than what we think. IPv4 we ran out by 1998. IPv6 will run out even faster than that. That is the whole problem here, because every day we are connecting billions and billions of devices to the network, including smart cars, driverless cars, which are going to come in the future. In 1999, Kevin Ashton of MIT actually coined the term Internet of Things, and since then it has been used. In 2000, obviously, LG wanted to jump on the bandwagon and they announced their smart fridge, which would detect things like how fresh your food is. If you had to order some food, then basically it would do it automatically for you if any of those resources were running low. Now, in 2002, I got interested in the whole IoT concept and I decided to build my first IoT plug. Now, bear in mind, there were no mobile apps in those days, and mobile phones were also pretty limited. So you had these old Nokia phones where you could not do much on it. So with limited resources, I decided to build my own IoT plug, as you can see here. And all it did was, now for the young generation, they might not have seen an RS-232 port anymore. I had connected all this to an RS-232 port on a computer that was opened up. And basically what you actually see here, if you can see my mouse pointer, here you have got all the relays with stepper motor controls. And basically they would go from one level to another, switch on, switch off, so the light could be dimmed. And all this had to be done through a command line interface on a keyboard. So you could just press some buttons on the keyboard and you could do it on an older computer. And here you can see that the voltage has been supplied for the bulb to light up. So this was in itself a basic form of IoT. Then in 2007, things changed dramatically. The first iPhone was released and everybody started talking about apps. Apps was the next big thing everybody wanted. So things like previously used, SMS and everything just died away, or phone calls, everything went on to apps. Today, we use more of WhatsApp than actually calling people, because we send text, we send videos, we send messages, photos, and so on. We do not use SMS as much as we used to in the past, because it's convenient, free of charge, we don't pay anything for it, and fantastic. And then Facebook collects all the data, of course. Google then started their testing their self-driving cars, which was fantastic that we had, because they came up with the idea, yeah, that drivers make errors and we need to prevent these errors, and this can be done by using artificial intelligence, machine learning, a lot of IoT technology to make these things work. In 2012, Philips actually released their first Hue, which was their smart lighting product. And you could control your lights from anywhere in the world. You could change colors and so on. And it was a big sort of a win for Philips, because it was really great that they brought something of that sort out. Google Glass was released, and all of us know about Google Glass and how it has helped many people in performing surgeries and so on. What was interesting was, while all this was happening, we just saw everything happening in the Western world. Now China came along, and China introduced what is called as the first ESP8266 chipset for IoT, which was one of the most sold chipsets as of today in the IoT world. It was basically the cheapest chipset that you could buy. I don't have one in front of me at the moment, but I would have shown you. But I've got its successor, the ESP32, that you can see in my slide on 2016. And this allowed a lot of developers to build a lot of products very easily. So you could just connect it over USB, a micro USB. You have got some ports here. You can connect different devices to it, like temperature sensor, air quality sensor, if you want to make a motion sensor and so on, and very easily build products. That was introduced first, and that took the internet by storm because of the price and the quality. The quality was really good. In 2015, I certified my first Android-based Z-Wave stack, uh, because in those days you had a standard called Z-Wave, which is now moving to the professional installer market. So that was something I worked on, but I'll come back to that later and explain what Z-Wave, Zigbee are. In 2016, Amazon Echo was introduced, and all of us got used to saying, Alexa, turn on the lights, Alexa, turn off the lights. Google Home, for example, I can say today, okay, Google, turn on the lights, and okay, Google, play my favorite playlist, and Google Home does all of that. And then we talk about the ESP32, which was a successor to the ESP8266, which is here, as you can see. And basically, it does Wi-Fi and BLE both together. So that is really nice because you can set it up using BLE and then connect it to Wi-Fi. So this was a pretty interesting product. Eventually, we also used the ESP32 to make a different kind of a PCB, a customized PCB. And then I can show you that now you look at the chipset size that was here. Now I'll show you the chipset size when we finally made it into a sensor. This is the chip here. It's even smaller than my fingernail now. So you can actually see the difference between from where it is to where you can really go. So there are multiple IoT technologies that are available as of today. So you have got Wi-Fi, which we all have at home. So you can connect these devices. For example, like I have a motion sensor here, I can connect it straight to Wi-Fi and it works. But Wi-Fi is power hungry. So if I put this motion sensor in on Wi-Fi, then it can consume battery life for up to 3 months and it's dead. Then I need to charge it again or replace the batteries. Then we have 433 megahertz. 433 megahertz has been around for years now. And a lot of technologies have, a lot of products have been using 433 in order to connect devices to. But these things on 433 megahertz, usually what happens is you need a hub that does the radio translation between Wi-Fi to 433. Then we have got BLE, which is Bluetooth Low Energy. Bluetooth Low Energy is used for many things, like my smartwatch uses it. Then I can use devices here over BLE which allow me to connect them. But again, you need a hub because it is not like Wi-Fi. It still operates on a similar frequency, but you still need a hub to run it. Then we have two competitors that I've put next to each other, that is Zigbee and Z-Wave. Zigbee and Z-Wave were basically the IoT protocols which were used until now, and now they are slowly moving into the professional market because you need hub, you need the chipsets, you need certification, so things become pretty expensive. Then you have got a cellular technology which is picking up quite a lot because operators, their only way of earning money is basically through selling SIM cards, and when you consume data, they earn money. So if these devices had a SIM card slot in them, then I could insert a SIM card and then basically start using the device, which would be perfect. With 5G technology now coming into picture, what is changing is that more and more people want to actually put SIM cards in their devices and forget about it. The main advantage is, okay, if the Wi-Fi goes down, there is a network problem on the Wi-Fi, you at least have a backup cellular network that works. So rather, why not use cellular networks for it? So that was the idea behind using cellular networks. Then you have Google pushing something called as Android Thread, as they call it. The Thread technology is sort of a low power technology. So the same sensor can work over IP protocol, though it needs some radio changes. But when you use it over IP protocol, they have done some radio modifications in a way that the same sensor, the battery could last for like 10 years. Again, depends on how many times you trigger. So if you put this in a shop where people are constantly moving, of course, it won't last for 10 years. It will last for much lower. Then you have got LoRa. LoRa is more like a French technology, which again uses radio technology to control devices. And there is a new standard that is coming out, which is called as Matter. And Matter basically unifies a lot of technologies together so that you can install any device using any app kind of a thing that is certified by Matter. So that way you do not have a confusion. Now, if I, as a normal consumer, I do not know what to pick up. If I go to a store, I might pick up a Zigbee device and a Z-Wave device and then wonder why they're not working. So you need something that unifies all these together. And that is where it said that Matter will come into picture. But we need to wait and watch for the next 2 to 3 years and see how Matter will perform. So there are some other IoT protocols that are usually used. We all know HTTP. Then there is MQTT. Now, MQTT is basically a protocol that is used for sending data. It is an IoT protocol and which is widely used, and it is an ISO standard. As a competitor to MQTT, you also have CoAP and you have got XMMP. Again, these are protocols that are used together to basically send data across devices or to the servers or in the cloud, whatever you can think of. The most commonly used devices that I have at the moment in front of me are like, you've got a light bulb, you've got plugs, you've got things like door motion sensor, which I just showed you, the door window sensor here. So when the door opens, basically the sensor triggers. Then we have got like a water leak sensor. So for example, last week, my dishwasher started leaking in the middle of the night because we put the dishwasher on in the night and go to sleep. There was a water leak sensor like this lying next to it. And as soon as it detected water, it made a call to my phone to say there is a water leak. So I went down and I saw, and my kitchen was full of water. So in that case, this actually saved me because I could turn on the dishwasher, turn off the dishwasher, I could turn off the water supply and prevented any further damage to the kitchen. Then you've got smoke sensors. I've also interestingly got a door lock here, which I've connected to a small sample door here, and I can control it from my phone to open the door or close it. Then I've got a doorbell lying somewhere here. So here is a doorbell. So if somebody presses this, I get a call on my phone and I can see who it is at my door. I've similarly got an IP camera here. Then we have got a panic button. So in case of emergency, an elderly person can press it and then you can inform the next of kin. You've got a thermostat. If you look behind me, there are some smart speakers. There is a smart watch that I have here, which measures a lot of things about my health. If I go for a bike ride, it knows how long I've gone. It basically draws the track where I've been, and I've got a smart TV as well. So these are the most commonly used devices. But with so many devices at home, what we lack is intelligence. We call it smart home, but still you need to control many of the devices through your apps. You need to basically use Alexa to control them. Why not make everything automated? And that is where you will be using a lot of AI, machine learning, and so on, where we'll be moving during this current decade, where a lot of AI machine learning will be applied, and most of the things should actually become automatic by the end of the decade is my prediction. Why should I even have a wall switch at home? Everything should be absolutely automatic. I don't have to even turn on my lights. Like at my home, for example, we have got intelligence built into our platform, which allows us to turn on lights at sunset and turn them off at a set time when we go to bed. But also you can add more intelligence to that. So think about it that your home is now self-learning and intelligent. And this is how the smart home of the future would look like. So a day previous in the night, I get a meeting has been scheduled at 9 a.m. I go to bed and my colleague decides to change the meeting time by 30 minutes in the night. My smart home recognizes this change, and as soon as it recognizes this change, it decides, okay, let me delay the alarm by 30 minutes and let Allah sleep for 30 minutes. However, it knows that the fuel in my car is less and I need to fuel on the way. So it decides to set my alarm to 20 minutes later as my car needs refueling the next morning. So instead of 6, my alarm rings at 6:20. And once you wake up, what do you do first? At least this is what I do. I pick up my phone and start reading something. if I've received any WhatsApp messages, whether I've received emails and so on. I start reading my phone. And that is what the bad addiction we have about smartphones. So I should not even have to touch my smartphone. While brushing my teeth, my smart home should actually just read out whatever messages are there, whatever information has been provided. And automatically, I should be able to browse through the list here. The news, things like that should automatically happen. The system should also inform me what time should I leave my home so that I can get to my office on time. So it tells me you need to leave your home by 8:30 a.m. Good. Now I know and I can schedule my day around a lot of information that I've got during the day. So I walk down. My favorite coffee is ready because the coffee maker has turned on and created my coffee. My breakfast is also ready. And then basically the system recognizes that I'm running low on milk and maybe running low on cornflakes, for example. So the system automatically orders it from the grocers. The money is automatically debited from my account, and I don't have to even touch anything there. Now my system also knows that it's cold outside, so it will basically start the car heating at 8:15 a.m. and it will automatically set the navigation in the car so that I don't have to worry about it. When I leave my home with my phone not being around the home, and it knows that no other phones are around the home. So basically, what will happen is that it will automatically lock the doors, then it will turn off the lights, set the temperature down, and that is how it will basically work. So when I get to the office, it has already booked my parking spot for me, so I don't have to worry about it. My favorite coffee at my office is ready. And while I'm in a meeting, the grocery delivery package arrives. So I get a phone call on my phone because the guy has pressed the video doorbell. I answer the phone and I see it's the delivery guy. So what I do next is I unlock the door. And as soon as I unlock the door, I start getting the video CCTV footages and I can actually see what is going on. I can monitor my home over CCTV. My day in my office is then over. I get to my car and leave the parking space, so the system automatically pays for the parking. I instruct the system and say, I'm coming home. And now the system knows I'm coming home. So the heating at home is turned on to reach the optimum temperature before I reach home because it was turned off and it is cold outside. So it will to reach the temperature like 22 degrees, it needs some time. So it will automatically adjust that and make sure that the temperature reaches 22 degrees. As soon as I reach home, I do not have to worry whether the gate to my house will open or not. It will be all done automatically. As soon as I reach home, it will know the proximity of my phone, and automatically, as soon as it knows the proximity of my phone and that I'm around, it will open the door lock in front of the home, and I can get in. Based on the camera recognition, it also knows my mood on the day, and using my mood it can set the lighting and music either on mood based preference or my preference that I have set during the learning pattern. So if I am sort of I love playing old Hindi music which is from the 50s and 60s, which is evergreen, so it will also start playing that. While taking a shower, since I've come home from work and I want to take shower now, it will start recommending what movies would you like to watch in the evening. So basically, I decide what movie I want to watch. I tell the system that this is the movie I want to watch. As soon as I walk into my living room after my shower, the movie starts. And then what happens is in the middle of the movie, my phone starts ringing. While watching the TV pauses and the lights brighten up. At the same time, I see a picture in picture because somebody has rung my doorbell. When I look at the picture in picture, it is my mother-in-law. So I decide not to open the door, as most of us would do it. So, so basically, that is what could happen. And when it's bedtime, I would just say good night, and the name of your smart home system was just called Consolomio. I would say good night, Consolomio. So the light bulbs would be gradually turned off, not all of a sudden, because you need to go to your bed and you might need a couple of minutes for it to go off. The door is locked, the temperature is turned down, the curtains are closed, and to give you a feel of, a bit of peace, then you play light music for the next 15 minutes, and basically it will help you relax and sleep. This is how it would work. But now there is even more interesting technology in the research that is happening. We do not need any of these sensors anymore. The Wi-Fi at home, like at home, I've got a mesh network, and most of you know a Wi-Fi mesh network, which you can just do roaming with it. You can go from one room to another without disconnection, and you can continue talking, and everywhere you get a consistent and nice signal if you have mesh network at home. There's something called as Wi-Fi CSI, which we can use as a fingerprint for sensor detection. So based on the CSI patterns and artificial intelligence, we can basically know what activity is going on within the home. So you don't need any of these sensors. As long as the Wi-Fi is up and running, everything would work. So you create a map of the home. So when you go from one room to another, it can automatically detect what is going on and then maybe turn on the lights or do something else that you want. Interestingly, with CSI, we have also seen that we could detect the heartbeats of babies, and if there were abnormalities with babies' hearts, we could even report those, which was very interesting for us. Even we could do motion detection, and if somebody falls, you can also do fall detection. You can also count the number of people in the home. So things like Airbnb, sometimes they rent out only for 2 people, but many people take 20 people with them. And in that point in time, you could use this CSI detection to know that there are 20 people in the home as opposed to 2, and then you can take some action against it. So what are the challenges with smart home? So the main challenges are basically fragmentation. What do I buy? Do I buy a Zigbee or Z-Wave? Is it compatible? Is it supported? I've got different apps for different products. That is the biggest challenge. If you have a Sonos speaker at home, you have a different app. Amazon Alexa, a different app. Google Home, a different app. Then you have got Philips Hue, a different app. So many apps. So they're not integrated together, and that is a big problem, and that should be sorted. Ease of installation. You buy from a shop, how easy it is to install. Sometimes for an elderly person, it could take very long to install because they are not, as we call them, digital aliens, because they did not have smartphones and computers when they were young. They are digital aliens. While if you look at your kids now, even a 2-year-old kid surprises me by showing me all the options on the iPad because he knows everything. So he's a digital native. So he can learn much faster than the previous generations who have been there and who have struggled with computers and phones. There's lack of intelligence, which we discuss. Power management.
I would request, sir, I would request you to kindly wind up because we've got not many other events.
Yeah, I'm just finishing off. This is my last slide.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Sorry for interruption. Thank you.
No problem. Power management is very important. Security is very important. Imagine that at home you have cameras and somebody hacks into it and then sees you, then that's a big problem according to me. There's a lot of data collection going on with regards to some of the devices that you buy from the big brands. So the next time, suppose I had a DHL parcel in front of my door, for example, they recognized it, and then they started showing me all ads related to DHL. So there's a lot of selling and advertising going on. So you get the product for a low price and then you start getting all advertisements. And there is a rapid evolution that is happening. Many of these devices just get outdated in a couple of months. So you need to buy the next device and next device and next device. And that is what is going on at the moment. So somehow that rapid evolution will continue. We cannot control that because every company wants to have an edge over things. And it will be like the mobile phone. So today you get one mobile phone, let's say iPhone 11, tomorrow you get an iPhone 12. So that is how the rapid evolution will happen in this field. So thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Sir, we will not have time to answer questions. That those we will send it to you through email and get your response.
Okay.
But excellent presentation, Dr. Kovadekar, excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And even the Honorable Chairman AICTE, Dr. Sahasra Buddhe has said Dr. Alhad gave excellent applications of IoT, and I fully agree, a very practical application. Several people have also asked, can we see some of these slides later? Jan Sharma, you
Yeah.
can coordinate. And Dr.
Right.
Alhad, if you are in Holland,
Yeah,
sometimes visit our Amity International School in Amsterdam.
sure, I
It's
will
a very
for sure.
wonderful international school. We invite you to visit anytime. Tell the young
Sure,
children
thank
also
you.
about IoT, but we are
I
proud
will.
to have you. Wonderful.
Sure, thank you very much. Thank you.
Jan Sharma, I just wanted to request that before we wrap up the session, if Professor Sahasrabudhe is still online, I just want to see if he is still online or no.
He's online, sir.
Yeah. So maybe, we have so many of our VCs on, just one line of greeting from some of our VCs for Professor Sahasrabudhe on this occasion. So Professor P.B. Sharma, do you want to quickly, and we have to be very brief because his time is valuable. Professor P.B. Sharma, please go ahead.
Sir, it's a great privilege to be present in such an important discussion. And I was so moved by the presentation of the chairman, AICTE, Dr. Sahasrabudhe ji, and your words of wisdom. We are in an age where we need to now submit to the cause of continuous innovations and ensure that they also benefit us in our pedagogy for delivery of our curriculum, as well as in fact preparing the future ready workforce. People like me have always believed that the science base of modern engineering is very important. And that is why we need to strengthen the science base of modern engineering. But I also believe that integration of science and engineering is absolutely essential to cause innovations in plenty for the new world in which we wish to live tomorrow. So in our campuses, we have a resolve that the science base of modern engineering must be surely strengthened, but at the same time, the synergy between science and engineering must be fostered in all our academic as well as research activities. And I'm
Professor Sharma, great. Thank you, Sharma ji. And we just have time for one line of greeting for Professor Dr. Balwinder Shukla. Will you please speak from Noida? Yes.
Very good morning, Chairman AICTE, Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe ji. It has been wonderful to have you with us. I've been attending all your sessions in different forums where you are going and addressing about the national education policy and how to integrate the industry with the education. So great initiatives. It's wonderful to have you, and you are really changing the face of education in India. So we are so grateful to you at the helm of the affairs of the engineering education, as well as implementing the national education policy. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shukla. Professor Rakesh Bhatnagar is Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Rajasthan, Jaipur. Till recently was Vice Chancellor, BHU. Professor Bhatnagar, please, your line of greeting for Chairman AICTE. I know you are also in a parallel session online.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm at two different places. Yeah. But these days, technology allows you to be at two different places at the same time. So, respected Professor Sahasrabudhe, I still remember when you visited my campus about a couple of months back in February, I suppose, to attend a function, and we were together. Professor Sahasrabudhe, I have always seen you. You give a lot of emphasis on innovation. And I always agree with you that country can never progress unless we put a lot of emphasis on innovation. And innovation only comes when we allow our younger mind to think out of the box. They should start thinking, which is not obvious. And the moment we start thinking non-obvious, we go to a new path and discover new things, innovate new things. And these days, knowledge as well as innovation is the key for becoming successful country, becoming a rich country, improving the economy. So I have always seen Professor Sahasrabudhe, you give a lot of importance to innovation. You arrange a lot of marathon meetings and competition amongst young people, youngsters. So with these words, I would like to thank you once again. And I'm very glad to be part of this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatnagar. Dr. Selva Murthy and Dr. Jha, are you there? If either one of you is there, if you can please put your camera on. Dr. Selva Murthy, Professor R.K. Jha, Professor Kamar Rahman. Okay, in the meantime, Professor Dhaneshwar, one line from you from Lucknow. President Ganeshwar, you can go first.
A very good morning to you, Mr. Budhe. I have been following you since 2006 when you were director of COEP Pune and I was with Bharati Vidyapit Pune. You have been always very inspirational and motivating, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Right. Dr. Selva Murthy, will you kindly give your one line of greeting?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Innovation is the forerunner. That is the key to development. Dr. Sahasrar Budhe, pleasure to see you. And you are a great visionary who is giving a new dimension for technology education in the country. And we compliment and we express our gratitude to you for all the support, blessings you keep giving to Amity universities and Amity as a group. So I would be, I take this opportunity on behalf of Founder President, the Chancellors, and on my own behalf, express our gratitude. We have a long association with you for more than 3 decades. And also all the experts whom I listen to you in the IoT and also the innovation has to become a culture in the country. And that is the Amity culture. And whatever we do, it should lead to lab to land, mind to market, and also from the laboratory to the bedside. So this is the concept which we have developed, innovation culture. And right from the people and the infrastructure, the ecosystem. So we are doing a great innovation in all campuses. And this particular, the conference, yet another important effort to give a new direction. We are listening to your guidance, advice. I must compliment the Vice Chancellor of Amity University, Madhya Pradesh, and also Dr. M.P. Kaushik, who has taken this initiative. Sharmaji is a very important, because innovation is the breath, and every breath of Founder President is innovation. So we have churned out a number of, we have filed more than 50.
Dr. Murthy, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. We could not do without you online. Thank you. I appreciate it.
In any case, I'll be there in valedictory address today. In the
we will hear long from you, because your words are so valuable. Finally, we cannot have everyone speak because of paucity of time. I know so many senior people. Finally, lastly, Professor Qamar Rahman, just one line from your greeting for Honorable Sahasrar Budhe.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very important meeting, and I think innovation is very important, and innovation comes from research. If you do high-class research, innovation will come automatically. So thank you very much.
So Professor Sahasrar Budhe ji, the whole Amity Galaxy is here to be with you, and we have great regard for you. We thank you for your time today. General Sharma, back to you.
Sir, thank you very much, sir, for your kind words. I would also like to mention to Professor Dr. Anil Sahasrar Budhe that Amity University Gwalior has also conducted one of the FDPs sponsored by Atal from 26th of May to 30th of May, and that was also on Internet of Things. Very interesting, sir, and we had a host of best speakers from all over the globe, and 200 people have benefited from that. So thank you very much for that, sir.
Professor P.V. Sharma, just sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but like Dr. Alahad today had walked us through 4 slides of presentation, what a smart home would look like. You wake up, automatically the toaster is on, the TV is on, parking lot is allotted. Can Professor P.V. Sharma, you're a great innovator, can you take the lead and from all of our campuses, make 4 slides for me, what an IoT-enabled smart campus would be like? A student walks in on their phone, they know exactly where to go. The pre-assigned homework is uploaded. Through adaptive learning, they get a score for the day. Hostel is, temperature is reduced when they're not in, or the AC is off. So there are many intelligent things. Can you, Professor P.V. Sharma, create for me similar slide for a absolutely, and think almost science fiction, what cannot be even done today, we will make it work. I already have commissioned one project with an IoT startup to come up with a concept for a IoT-enabled full campus. But let us first dream, like Alahadji gave us a good example, that walking through what are all the things that a student, a faculty, a researcher, a guest could benefit from if it is a fully smart-enabled campus. This concept we will present to Sahasrar Budhe ji, and then we'll implement as a pilot at one of our campuses and then roll out to all of our campuses. Right.
Will be my pleasure to do that, sir. Surely.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Professor P.V. Sharma.